Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating political commentary by Dr. Steve Turley regarding the alleged internal collapse of the Iranian government. We've all seen the isolated headlines, right? But today, we're cutting through all that noise to visually map out the actual architecture of this reported disintegration. We're going to look at exactly how the state apparatus is, or maybe, more accurately, isn't, operating right now.
So let's just jump right into the core thesis here. The commentator's central argument is that the recent explosive events we're seeing inside Iran, the military strikes, the political resignations, these massive leadership vacuums, they aren't just your standard political friction. The source argues we are watching the structural disintegration of the Islamic Republic from within. It's an institutional breakdown, plain and simple, rather than just a string of bad days for the administration.
To wrap our heads around this, we'll systematically map out the claims made in the source material by looking at the fracturing of four key pillars, followed by the final signs of structural disintegration.
Okay, kicking things off with pillar number 1, the targeted assassination. Let's look at the catalyst.
Specifically, we're talking about a recent, highly targeted military strike in the Andes district, which is a western suburb of Greater Tehran. The target? IRGC General Vahed Hakan. And according to the source, he wasn't just some battlefield commander. He was literally the crucial bridge connecting Iran's military machine with its state broadcasting networks. He managed sensitive satellite contracts, amplified regime-approved messaging, and kept military secrets completely off the public airwaves. So by taking him out, a massive wedge was driven right into the state's communications infrastructure.
The commentary points out that this surgical strike sends an absolutely unmistakable message. Despite that April ceasefire, the regime is not getting any peace to rebuild. Instead, the implication is that every single intelligence officer and general in the chain of command remains an active target, right inside Iranian borders.
Moving on to Section 2. A president tries to quit. Let's look at the crisis within the executive branch. This is where things get really wild. The analysis highlights this extraordinary report that President Masoud Pezeshkian allegedly submitted his resignation to the supreme leader. Why? Well, his elected civilian government has essentially been completely marginalized. They are excluded from vital decisions and unable to even carry out their legal duties. And filling that massive vacuum? The source asserts that hardline military factions within the IRGC have seized absolute control of the state apparatus, leaving the elected officials totally in the dark.
But, as the commentary rightly points out, you don't just quietly resign in Iran. IRGC-affiliated state media aggressively pushed back on this, immediately rejecting the resignation and labeling it as fake news. So, what does this tell us? Well, the source argues this rapid, super-public contradiction between the civilian office and the military-controlled media is a massive red flag. It proves there is no single, coherent government operating in Tehran right now. It's just competing factions fighting over the narrative.
Which brings us to Pillar 3, the unseen supreme leader. Let's talk about the absolute top of the Iranian political structure.
With the civilian president allegedly sidelined and trying to quit, the commentator raises a pretty critical question. Who is actually calling the shots? Focus naturally shifts to the newly appointed supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei. But here's the catch. According to the commentary, his physical condition, his whereabouts, and whether he is even actively participating in governance are entirely unknown. He simply hasn't been seen. Talk about a massive void at the very top of the hierarchy, right?
Citing Israeli intelligence assessments, the source claims Mujtaba Khamenei has effectively been reduced to a rubber stamp, basically a human autopen. The argument here is that he's just automatically legitimizing decisions that have already been made by the men holding the weapons. If true, that makes the ultimate religious and political authority in Iran a total facade.
Now, for the fourth pillar, a splintered Revolutionary Guard. Let's examine the actual reality of control. So if the civilian government is powerless and the supreme leader is an unseen rubber stamp, that leaves the IRGC as the final load-bearing pillar of the state. But the source argues the IRGC is no longer this unified top-down entity. Instead, it's allegedly decentralized into regional headquarters. Rather than taking orders from Tehran, these factions are acting completely autonomously. They're competing with each other and bypassing the civilian leadership entirely, kind of acting like independent mini-states within the state. Just think about the global implications of this kind of fracturing for a second. Because of these competing autonomous military groups, the commentator concludes that international negotiations are literally a nightmare right now. Whether you're trying to broker nuclear deals or ceasefires, there simply isn't a single unified regime to negotiate with anymore. The guy you talk to on Monday might have zero authority to speak for the faction operating on Tuesday.
Finally, Section 5, Signs of Structural Disintegration. Let's look at the commentator's final assessment.
Let's pull all these fractured pillars together and evaluate the state apparatus as a whole based on the source's breakdown. The picture painted here is one of total institutional collapse. The military propaganda link, eliminated in Tehran. The executive branch, paralyzed, with the president trying to resign. The supreme leader, unseen, acting as an alleged rubber stamp. And the IRGC command, splintered into autonomous regional factions. Literally every single load-bearing pillar is fundamentally compromised.
Which leads us directly to this really striking conclusion from the commentary. The source forcefully asserts that despite the uniforms and the official state broadcasts, Iran is not making decisions from a position of strength. Instead, the argument is that we're witnessing a collapsing state desperately trying to maintain the illusion of control. The actual substance of governance has drained away, leaving only the hollow symbols of power.
And remember, this structural disintegration is absolutely not happening in a vacuum. There are 80 million citizens inside Iran. The commentary stresses that these 80 million people are watching this institutional decay very, very closely. They see the internal power vacuums, they notice the missing leaders, and they are fully aware of the splintered military factions. A population of this size, witnessing the sudden vulnerability of their rulers, that represents a massive, unpredictable variable in the days ahead.
Ultimately, the commentary leaves us right here, staring down a massive geopolitical question. With a hollowed-out executive branch, a fractured military, and targeted strikes hitting key officials in the capital, we really have to consider what this means for the stability of the entire region and the future of the Iranian people. Are we just watching a temporary political reshuffling, or, based on this structural evidence, is the Islamic Republic truly in its final days? It's a question the whole world is going to be watching closely. Thanks for hanging out with me on this deep dive for The Explainer, and keep questioning the structures of power around you.